My husband's behavior changed after my sister announced her pregnancy. Am I missing something? I need to get this off my chest because, quite frankly, I'm lost. I can't make sense of what's been happening over the last few months, and it's driving me crazy. There have been so many small incidents that, when pieced together, feel like a giant puzzle that I just can't solve. It all began when my sister announced she was pregnant, and ever since, my husband has been acting strange. There's really no other word for it. Before I get into the heart of it, I need to give some background so you can understand the dynamic here. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, Ethan, 34M, for 6 years. We've been together for almost a decade, and while we've had our ups and downs like any couple, we've always prided ourselves on being open and communicative. At least, that's what I thought until a few months ago. My sister, Tara, 29F, and I have always been close. Like really close. We've always been each other's confidants, and growing up, she was basically my best friend. Naturally, when I got married, she and Ethan became friends as well. We often spent time as a trio, and Ethan seemed to get along with her really well. Almost too well, but I'll get to that later. Tara got married to her husband, Jake, 35M, about 3 years ago, and they've been trying to have a baby ever since. It was a long, difficult journey for her. She had suffered a miscarriage about a year ago, and I remember how devastated she was. When she finally announced her pregnancy 3 months ago, everyone in the family was overjoyed. It was like a breath of fresh air after the sadness we'd all experienced before. But it's also where things with Ethan took a turn. On the day Tara announced her pregnancy, we were having a small family gathering. It was a typical Saturday afternoon at my parents' house, just a casual BBQ. My parents, Tara and Jake, and Ethan and I were all there. We were laughing, eating, and enjoying each other's company when Tara suddenly said she had something to share. She stood up, placed her hands on her belly, and with a big smile announced, "Jake and I are expecting." The room erupted with excitement. My mum burst into tears, my dad hugged Jake, and I practically leaped out of my chair to hug Tara. I was so happy for her. It was the moment she had been waiting for, and I couldn't have been more thrilled. But when I turned to Ethan, I noticed something strange. Instead of joining in the excitement, he was sitting there, silent, with a stiff smile plastered on his face. His eyes weren't on me or Tara. They were locked on Jake, and there was something in his expression I couldn't quite place. It wasn't joy or excitement. It was something darker. I brushed it off at the time, thinking maybe he was just surprised or overwhelmed. After all, Ethan and I had talked about having kids ourselves, but we hadn't gotten serious about it yet. Maybe the pregnancy announcement just caught him off guard. I gave him a quick nudge and whispered, "Aren't you happy for them?" He snapped out of it, nodded, and said, "Yeah, of course, it's great news." But his voice was flat, emotionless, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's behavior only got stranger. He started becoming distant, not just with me, but with everyone. He began spending more time at work, coming home later than usual, and when he was home, he was glued to his phone or laptop, barely engaging in conversation. He also seemed to avoid any mention of Tara's pregnancy. Whenever I'd bring up baby names or nursery plans that Tara had shared with me, he'd change the subject or offer a short, distracted response. At first, I thought maybe he was just stressed about work. He's in finance, and his job can be demanding. But this felt different. It wasn't just stress, it was like he was actively pulling away from me, from our relationship, from everything. One night, about a month after Tara's announcement, I decided to confront him. We were sitting on the couch watching TV, and I could tell he wasn't paying attention. His mind was elsewhere. I paused the show and turned to him. "Ethan, is something going on? You've been acting really distant lately, and I feel like you're avoiding me." He looked startled, like he hadn't expected me to notice. "What?" "No, everything's fine. I've just been busy with work, that's all," he said a little too quickly. "I get that work can be stressful, but it feels like there's more to it than that," I pressed. "You've been acting differently ever since Tara announced her pregnancy. Is there something bothering you about it?" For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Panic, maybe? But he quickly shook his head and said, "No, of course not. I'm happy for Tara and Jake. I guess I've just been thinking about us, about our future. We've talked about having kids, and maybe it's making me realize that we should start planning for that too." His explanation made sense on the surface, but there was something in the way he said it that didn't sit right with me. It felt rehearsed, like he was telling me what he thought I wanted to hear. But I let it go, hoping that maybe it was just a phase and that things would go back to normal. Spoiler, they didn't. In the following weeks, Ethan's strange behavior only intensified. He became more secretive, guarding his phone like it held the secrets to the universe. He'd take his phone with him to the bathroom, something he'd never done before, and I noticed that he started locking it with a password. Whenever I'd ask who he was texting or what he was working on, he'd get defensive, saying it was just work stuff, or that I was overthinking things. But my gut told me otherwise. One evening while Ethan was in the shower, I couldn't help myself. I looked at his phone. It was locked, of course, but as I stared at the screen, my heart was pounding. What was I even looking for? I didn't want to believe that Ethan was hiding something from me, but the secrecy, the distance, the strange reactions, it all added up to something I couldn't ignore. I didn't find anything that night, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Then, a couple of weeks later, something happened that sent my suspicions into overdrive. We were at another family gathering, this time at Tara and Jake's house for a small dinner. Tara was visibly pregnant now, and the excitement in the air was palpable. Everyone was talking about the baby, passing around ultrasound pictures, and discussing baby shower plans. But Ethan seemed more withdrawn than ever. He barely spoke the entire evening, and when Tara asked him directly if he was excited to be an uncle, he gave her a forced smile and muttered, "Yeah, sure." After dinner, I noticed Ethan and Jake talking quietly in the corner of the living room. It seemed like a normal conversation at first, but then I saw Ethan's expression change. His face tensed, and his body language became rigid. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it looked tense, almost confrontational. After a few minutes, Jake walked away, looking uncomfortable, and Ethan immediately came over to me and said, "We need to go. Now." I was taken aback. "What? We just got here. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm just not feeling well. Let's go," he said, his tone sharp. On the drive home, I asked him what had happened with Jake, but he brushed it off, saying it was nothing important. I didn't believe him. Something had clearly happened, but he wasn't willing to talk about it. I felt a growing pit in my stomach, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was hiding something big. That night, as Ethan slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing with questions. Why was Ethan acting this way? What had he said to Jake? And why did he seem so uncomfortable around Tara now? The more I thought about it, the more I began to wonder if there was something going on between Ethan and my sister. The thought made me sick, but I couldn't ignore the possibility. They had always been friendly, maybe a little too friendly, but I had never thought much of it before. Now, though, with Ethan's strange behavior and the tension between him and Jake, I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to their relationship than I realized. I decided to confront Tara. The next day, I called her and asked if we could meet for coffee. I needed to get to the bottom of this, and I figured the best way to do that was to talk to her directly. When we sat down at the cafe, I could tell she sensed something was wrong. "What's going on? You seem tense," Tara said, looking concerned. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "Tara, has something been going on between you and Ethan? I don't mean to accuse you of anything, but he's been acting really strange ever since you announced your pregnancy, and I don't know what to think anymore." Tara's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, nothing has been going on between me and Ethan. Why would you even think that?" "I don't know. He's been distant, secretive, and every time we're around you and Jake, he seems uncomfortable. And the way he reacted to your pregnancy, it just doesn't make sense." Tara shook her head, her face pale. "I swear nothing is going on. I'm as confused as you are. I thought maybe he was just stressed about becoming an uncle or something, but now that you mention it, He has been acting weird. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing the situation. If there wasn't anything going on between them, then what was causing Ethan to act this way? I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something I was missing. A few days later, I finally got the answer, but it wasn't at all what I expected. Ethan came home from work one evening, looking more exhausted than usual. He sat down on the couch and rubbed his temples, clearly stressed. I sat down next to him, trying to offer some comfort. "Ethan, please talk to me. I know something's been bothering you, and I can't take the silence anymore. Whatever it is, we can figure it out together." He sighed heavily and finally looked me in the eyes. "I've been keeping something from you, and I'm not proud of it. But it's time you knew the truth." My heart raced as I braced myself for what he was about to say. "It's not about Tara," he began, and I let out a small sigh of relief. "But it is about her pregnancy. You know how I've been distant and acting weird since she announced it?" I nodded, hanging on his every word. "Well, it's because I've been dealing with a lot of unresolved guilt. A few years ago, before we got married, Tara and we slept together." My stomach dropped. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. "What? How could this be true?" Ethan continued. "It was a one-time thing, and we both regretted it immediately. We decided never to speak of it again, and I buried it deep down, hoping it would never come up. But when she announced her pregnancy, all of that guilt came rushing back. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had betrayed you, even though it happened before we got married." I was stunned. I couldn't find the words to respond. My mind was racing with a million thoughts: betrayal, anger, confusion. Why hadn't they told me? How could they have kept something like this from me for so long? "I'm so sorry," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I should have told you sooner, but I was scared of losing you. I never wanted to hurt you." Tears welled up in my eyes as I tried to process the revelation. This was the last thing I expected, and I didn't know how to move forward. Tara had been my best friend, my sister, and Ethan had been my partner, the person I trusted most. And now both of them had betrayed me in the worst possible way. "I need some time to think," I finally managed to say, standing up from the couch. "I can't deal with this right now." I left the house and went for a long drive, trying to clear my head. How was I supposed to come back from this? Could I ever forgive them? Could I even look at either of them the same way again? As I drove, a million questions swirled in my mind. Was Tara's baby Jake's, or could it be Ethan's? The thought made me feel physically ill. I knew I needed answers, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear them. When I finally returned home, Ethan was waiting for me. He looked like he hadn't moved from the couch since I left. "I'm so sorry," he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've hurt you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. But I need you to know that Tara's baby is Jake's. There's no doubt about that. What happened between me and Tara was years ago, and it's never happened again." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I believed him. Trust had been shattered, and it would take a long time for me to even begin to rebuild it, if I could at all. I haven't spoken to Tara since I found out. I don't know if I can face her, knowing what I know now. Part of me wants to confront her, demand an explanation, but the other part of me is too hurt to even look at her. So here I am, left with this massive, painful secret, trying to figure out what to do next. Should I confront Tara? Should I forgive Ethan and try to move forward? Or is this betrayal too deep to ever come back from? I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure. My life will never be the same.